Howdy, everybody. It's the Blackhawks Cowboy here, and today I'm joined with a very special guest, the prospect Don himself, Anthony Donati. How are we doing?
I'm good. How are you, dude?
I'm doing great. So, as we know, the draft recently transpired, and in it, it was not the blockbuster we were expecting, but there was definitely a lot of interesting moves. So, me and Don over here, we went ahead and drafted our grades, and I'll go ahead and get started with Matthew Schaefer. First overall, I went with an A plus. I feel like the Islanders, with trading Dobson the day of the draft, they needed to rebuild their defensive core, and Schaefer is just a great piece to put in there in that defensive slot. He's young, he's skilled, he was very experienced, he looked very professional out there in juniors, and I'm excited to see where he goes.
So, first of all, for Matthew Schaefer, that was an incredible pick. I think that they didn't big brain it. What Darsh did with the Islanders this year, they replenished their prospect pool. I really do like everybody they picked, even down to, Daniil Prokhorov. So, I say A plus grade for the Islanders this draft. And Matthew Schaefer is going to be an elite top pair defenseman.
Yeah. So, second overall, the San Jose Sharks. Hawks fans on Twitter, we were trying, we were pushing for Frondell, but it didn't work. So Misa went second overall. I went ahead and gave that an A. Misa and Schaefer, they were consensus one and two. If one was going one, the other was going two. Misa had 62 goals, 72 assists, 134 points this year in the OHL for Saginaw, and he fits the bill of what the exceptional status players are. Like one-way tickets to the show, and he went out and he showed it this year. And it's going to be a good, fun team for the Sharks coming up these next few years.
Yeah, I think Misa was who they should pick. I think that there was two clear top one tier players, and Misa was the second one. So yeah, A for that particular pick. Their next two picks were interesting. Like definitely best player available on one of them, but I think that they left value off the board on like their 33rd overall, which was Simon Wang. But I think overall with the Misa pick, you have to take him.
Yep. So third overall, Chicago Blackhawks, of course, went with our Swedish savior himself, Anton Frondell. I went ahead and give that a B plus. I wrote a write up on him on my website, but with Frondell, you know what you're getting. You're getting a guy, PP1 guy, elite shot, and if you put him with a guy like Bedard or Nazer, easy 35 goal campaigns, probably 40 assists, point per game player in the NHL in the future. And right now, there's talks of him coming to the NHL this year, whether to start the year, to end the year. But the pick, he's been progressing a lot in camp, and the pick looks great.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if it was the best thing to do to put him into the NHL automatically, but if there's one player that could succeed in the NHL, it's somebody that's been playing against men for a very long time. There's just something about Anton Frendel that I knew the Blackhawks were going to love. I feel that obviously Misa probably before, but I think that if we had the second overall pick and you know, Schaefer and Frondell were on the board, I think that the Hawks probably would prefer to just trade down and take Frondell anyway. I feel like they see him as their power forward, somebody with an elite shot, not really a play driver, but he wants to be on Bedard's line. When we were at the draft, we asked him like, what position is he? He said whatever Bedard's not. I absolutely love that answer.
Yeah, team player. So fourth overall, Utah went with the pick that was kind of solidified, but towards this part of the draft is when we started seeing more variations in the picks. So they went with Caleb Denoye. I went ahead, I gave it a B minus. Denoye, I've seen some crazy takes about him, whether it be he's going to be horrible, he's going to be great. I think he could be a solid middle sixer, but I don't ever see him going to that top six potential that some people have for him. I give it a B minus though. Utah, they're contending. Denoye is one of the more draft ready prospects, and he's a guy that he's a defensive stalwart. He can play two ways. That's his game. And Utah, they can always use that, especially as they're gearing up towards entering the playoffs.
I really did like the Desnoyers pick because for Utah, it was either Desnoyers or Brady Martin, and I feel like Brady Martin would not have been a value pick. I see Brady Martin more as a contributor on a line rather than anything where it's a second line contributor. But the thing about it is with Desnoyers, he actually has 1C, 2C upside. Like and he could be a Selkie Award winner, like especially with votes. This guy is really underrated. I would give this an A minus as well because this is the right pick. I think if they would have taken somebody like James Haggins, it's kind of redundant to what the Utah Mammoths already have. They have a lot of good players, but they needed a 2C. I also think that this helps out Logan Cooley a little bit too. Find out what he is. If he's not your 1C, I think they can both platoon as like top six Cs, and then you have a ton of talent on that squad. So I just feel like Desnoyers is the perfect fit where I could totally have seen him being drafted third overall by the Blackhawks just because of what we needed. But I'm gonna say A minus just because like when you get a guy like Desnoyers who solidified in your top six and the floor is honestly a lot higher with that high upside, I love it.
Yeah. And so, as we segue, like you said, the choice was Denoye or Brady Martin, and Nashville went Martin at 5. I was shocked when this pick came out because we all thought the top 9 was pretty much the same players, and Brady Martin, he started climbing and he went 5th. I gave it a C plus. Nashville, as we all know, massively underperformed expectations this year. They signed a bunch of players. They signed Marchessault, they signed Stamkos, and they were bottom of the league. So Martin, very similar skill set to Denoye with his two-way potential. He's a good player, a physical presence, and Nashville, they're going to probably be starting either a retool or rebuild, and he could be a good player, but I do think they left a lot of value on the board with this pick.
I completely agree with you. Whereas I was on with a Sirius XM NHL prospects host, Shane Malloy, yesterday, and I talked to him a lot during the NHL draft. And, he kind of gave me a little scouting awakening because he asked me how long I think a star player or a player has the puck on their stick. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Like per shift, I was probably thinking like 8, 10 minutes, not per shift, but per game. Maybe they have it 6 minutes. He told me like around 5% of the time on ice. So when scouts and teams are looking at these players, they're looking at obviously the skill, which is the A game, and the offensive ability, and when you have the puck on your stick. But the B game and the C game is height. So the B game is what you do without the puck. And that's the most important thing with why Brady Martin continued to increase his draft stock. Because you're seeing what the Panthers have built. They built players that have incredible B games. What are you going to do when you don't have the puck on your stick? What can you do to impact the game when your offense isn't there, when your shot percentage isn't as high, and you know it's all about physicality. It's all about back checking, making a taking a hit to make a play, what you do in the subtle movements by the boards or in the corners. So not making decisions and giving up takeaways and giveaways. So I was thinking James Haggins, but when I think about that, it's what do the Predators need? They need winning players that understand how to play with their B game. And now I'm kind of on the board of Brady Martin might be exactly that. His player comps were Sam Bennett, who won the Conn Smythe, which is obviously the best player comp you could have after the playoffs. Tom Wilson, who uses his body well, and Zach Hyman, who potted 50 goals on a line with McDavid. I don't see him getting to those numbers, but I can certainly see a guy that scores more points in the playoffs than he does in the regular season. So I actually think that this is more of a B grade where I probably would have put it as a C plus like you had it. But the thing with Brady Martin is that his B game is just fantastic. So he's somebody that you're going to have to figure out how to play with when you're playing him in the playoffs, or you're going to know how to play. You're going to have to try to figure out how to play against him. And I feel like that's a huge component of his game. So I'm going to say B for this one because even though it wasn't a value pick, I could totally see why the Predators did what they did.
Yeah. So with the next pick, though, It was very interesting. A lot of people had this guy going way higher, including myself. It was Porter Martone to the Philadelphia Flyers, and I gave this pick an A because if there's one weakness in Martone's game, he never uses his body. If there's one thing Philly is known for, is taking players who don't like to use their body and making them use their body. And Philadelphia is that scrappy team that they're going to develop Martone into a monster if they can, right? They're a physical team. That's the way they're built. When you look at their coaching pedigree, that's who they hire. They hire coaches, the physical system, and if Martone can develop that side of his game, he could easily become the best player of the draft without a doubt. So I gave this an A.
Yeah, I would see this as a an A minus because it's still an A, but what they did with getting Mitch Koff, I feel like that was an A. Like just basically having him fall to 7. Maybe it would be an A. It would be somewhere in the range of A minus because Porter Martone is a fantastic playmaker. Going to be great with Mitchkov, even if he's on the wing. 6'3", doesn't use his body, but like you said, he's going to continue to do so. You got Jack Nesbitt a couple picks after, which I thought was a little bit of a high take, but then their second round was absolutely incredible. So they filled out their team really, really well. They got Trevor Zegras. I feel like they were the perfect fit for a team like Porter Martone. He wasn't really being mocked there. It was Jake O'Brien, just because their his power play specialty, and his weapons and his vision. But Martone has the exact same thing except his skating. But it's his first 3 strides, like everybody always says, and I feel like it's going to only get better when he goes to the NCAA and the NHL. So I do really like the Porter Martone pick. I feel like he's one of the best players in this draft, and I think that it was a mistake he fell this far.
Yeah, I completely agree. But with the next pick, Boston was on the clock, and they took the Boston kid. They took James Higgins over at number 7. I gave it an A minus because with Higgins, point per game as a freshman in the NCAA, which is an amazing feat. Probably one of the better developmental leagues. And when you look at what Boston needs, they could easily flip Higgins. It depends how Sweeney is going to look at this team with they're got really good players. They have Pasternak, they have Swayman, but the team massively underperformed this year. So either with Higgins you start a retool, or you start a rebuild, or you can go off and trade him. But either way, you're getting amazing value at number 7 with this pick. So I give it an A minus.
Yeah, I would also say A minus. He was my third ranked player in the entire class. Martone was 4. But the thing about it is like it's interesting that he went to Boston. They obviously needed centers and they needed somebody like him, but it was kind of like, are they going to take Roger McQueen or O'Brien? I feel like you got a potential star in James Haggins. Obviously, you said keeping him in Boston because he went to Boston College. I just really like everything that he brings. Really good skater, really good playmaker. I would say A minus too. It's tough to get out like an A other than Islanders and Misa with the Sharks, but this is probably the closest there is to an A because he is third ranked and he went 7 overall. So this was a really good pick by Boston.
I agree. And with the next pick, it was Jake O'Brien going to. I can't remember exactly who he went to. Let me.
Seattle.
Seattle. So Jake O'Brien to Seattle. That was an interesting pick for Seattle. I went ahead and gave it a A because I just like O'Brien as a player. I was super high on him since about September, October. I was watching a lot of Merrick highlights, and like I'm looking at this guy who's 6'2", playing like he's 5'11". Right? He's got insane handles for his size. He's got insane speed. He's a great player. He's got to work on the defensive side of the game, but apart from that, we're going to see what he can look like without his buddy Lardis next to him. But I think Seattle got a lot of value out this pick, and I know with you don't like giving out A's, but
Yeah, I would say A minus B plus, like in that range, 88% or something around there, just because like This was probably best player available on the board. I'm just surprised they didn't go Merca here. Even though I think Jake O'Brien's probably ranked a little higher than Merca, but it's just like for need. Um, uh, Obviously, I love Jake O'Brien. Like you said, he was with Nick Lardis in the power play, and Nick Lardis scored 72 goals, and Jake O'Brien was the best player in Brantford. Really good playmaker, incredible on the power play. He's going to be a weapon. I really love everything about him. I think he's just going to be he's going to be close to a star in the NHL. So, yeah, I would say I would tend to lean also A minus. That's the thing about this class. Like a lot of teams did really good. There were some like really odd picks, but then some teams did really good. Take best player available, and that's what I think Seattle did here.
Yeah, and we could say the same thing for this next pick with Radim Murtka going to Buffalo. I went ahead and I gave it a B because Murtka, he's 6'6", super physical player. He didn't look exactly the happiest to be there, but I mean, I you can't really go wrong with a shutdown defenseman like Murtka, who's only going to develop further in your system if you're Buffalo. You know, Buffalo's in a weird spot. They're kind of in that mediocre phase. They kind of suck, but their team looks way better on paper than they should be performing. And Murtka could be a huge piece to get that team to the playoffs in 2, 3 years if the time comes.
Yeah, I don't know if necessarily Mirko was sad to go there. I just think that that's his face. Um, I saw him plenty of times this year, like personally, and he just lights up whenever you talk to him or say something funny. He's always has a smile on his face. I think the bad thing about Buffalo is they keep trading all their young players for nothing, and it's just like, what are you doing there? Like the Kirk trade. So obviously, I wouldn't be as happy if I went to the Buffalo if the Ducks and Penguins are behind me in that range, and same with Seattle. Like Sabres are probably the worst spot you could go to, but if you're a right-handed defenseman, it might be the best. You have Owen Power, you have Rasmus Dahlin, you got I know Bowen Byram's gonna leave or get traded, but you have a lot of players there that are good for you to be a top pair defenseman because I think Mirko will be maybe quarterback power play two, like power play two, in my opinion. And then you have a guy that is going to only develop offensively more with his skills because I think he has a lot more left. So I really do like Redeemer. He's one of my favorite players in this entire class. I'm gonna say B plus here just because it's like the Sabres, and I wished he went to a better spot. But for him playing wise, where you get two left-handed defensemen that are probably closer to top pair, I think it would be great for him personally because either one is going to be.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of Anaheim, they went with the marketing pick, and they took our boy Roger McQueen from the Brandon Wheat Kings, 10th overall. I give it a B plus as well, because I had Murtka and McQueen in that same tier of like they're just outside this top echelon of O'Brien and Martone and all those guys, but they're really really good players. And McQueen, he fell a little bit, mostly due to I'm pretty sure he suffered an injury this year, but he's still an amazing player. He's got insane skill. He's a big body, and I'm excited to see what the Ducks do. They're in a weird spot. They brought in a lot of veterans this offseason, and they've got a young core rising up, so they could be a wild card team this year. Maybe even get that third divisional spot. Could be crazy to say right now, but we never know. It's hockey.
Yeah, Roger McQueen was kept out of the lineup for 4.5 months with a back injury. He said he was pain free at the combine for 30 days. It was misdiagnosed, that's why it took a little longer. But the thing is, like, back injuries are something that you can't really play around with. Like, I herniated my disc 2 days ago again. It was reherniated. So I was in the hospital, like, on the 5th after the 4th of July. And it was just, like, annoying because you don't really feel anything. And then you just tweak it doing something stupid like basketball, badminton, or whatever you're playing, like pickleball. I know he plays pickleball. Like you can flare up, and as soon as that happens, it feels like you can't walk. So, yeah, there's going to be concern because he's 6'5", right-handed center that already has back issues, but this guy is so much talent. Some of the biggest upside in the entire class. Like 95 Lightning McQueen, like he's gonna have the highest jersey sale of all time
Oh,
for
100%.
rookies. Not all time, but very close. And like this guy is just legit. He has all the skills to make him a first line like cornerstone center if he develops. I don't know how he fell to 10. I think that it was a little overblown with the back injury, but like I said, like it is a concern when you're that tall and you have back injuries. This guy is so talented. So I really like what the Ducks did. Very Pavard pick, like not caring. This was basically a second back at Seneca. So it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So A minus.
So this next pick, probably the biggest head scratcher of the draft. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they traded up with the rivals across the state in Philadelphia, and they took Benjamin Kindle at this number 11 slot. And I was confused, to say the least, because when you talk about the top of this class, Kindle was more in the late teens to early 20s. Like, he wasn't ranked just outside the top 10 in nearly anyone's mock. I'm going to go have to give it a C minus D plus range because it doesn't make sense with who they left on the board. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But I feel like they could have gone in a different direction that would have been better for their future. They lost a lot of value with this pick. Head scratching to say the least, like I said.
Yeah, Kendall was actually the first player I got to interview live at the combine just for a sit down. And, it was funny because Kyle Dubas was sitting right there next to me, like 4 chairs down. And I didn't even think that they would be interested in him. Like, so obviously, this actually was their original pick at 11. Philadelphia traded up for their 12th pick. That was the Rangers' original pick, but with conditions, the Rangers gave the Penguins this pick. But so, because that was a head scratcher too at 12. 11 and 12 were just really weird head scratchers.
Yeah.
I see Kendall being more of a head scratcher because I know for a fact there were 3 teams in the teams that wanted Jack Nesbitt that went 12, but I don't know how many teams wanted Kendall, especially that high. I would have taken Victor Eklund, who fell to 16, or traded back or try to recruit some assets, continuing to do so. I know they did that with the 12th pick anyway as well and took Bill Zonin with 22, and then 31 they got they I don't actually
I think it was
remember who they got
Bruce. I think it was Bruce Nefich.
yeah, okay, Henry Brusevich, yeah. Who Henry Brusevich, his time on ice continued to go down during the playoffs, but he had a good Mem Cup, so that was really interesting to see. But you have a guy like Kindle who I don't think anybody helped his stock the last 2 months of the season other than him, Hoots, and probably Rejny. So all the under 5 or 6 foot guys helped their stock because Hoots was obviously Captain Cooch for the gold. Rejny put up Gavin McKenna numbers, and Kindle had 5 overtime game winners this year, especially in the playoffs. So he just played incredible. I'm very surprised he went this high, but I love the kid. I think that he's going to be a really good top 6 player. I think that there's a lot of offensive upside here, but he has to work on his skating. That's it. C plus because well, C plus to C range, just because I don't think the value is there for this pick, and it's
Mm.
not on Kindle at all. It's just like the value of the draft. Like, if you get Kindle at 18, it looks a lot better than getting him at 11.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's a bad player by any means. I just think I don't know what Dubas was doing there. That was a very Dubas pick.
Yeah,
But this
it's
next pick,
all about
back to
value.
back head scratchers with the Pittsburgh original picks. Nesbitt out of nowhere goes 12 to Philly again. So Philly, they went up and they took Nesbitt and they took Martone in this draft. And with Nesbitt, I give it like a C because again, this is a guy that you could have gotten probably late teens, early 20s, especially. So I got it wrong last time. This was last pick was Pittsburgh's original pick. This pick they traded up for him. So
Yeah.
I don't see the reasoning to trade up for a guy that you could have gotten much later, unless I'm not tapped in the way that you or the GMs are with each other. But I just can't get behind it even more. So I'm gonna give it like a C.
Nesbitt would have been taken at pick 22, way before, and I guess there was three teams that were interested in him in the teens, but at the same time, like at that point, just let the other team take him. You don't give up two first round picks for somebody that is already a high reach at pick 12. Nothing on Nesbitt, but they're calling him a 2C. Like now him and Jet Luchenko are going to platoon at 2C, 3C. And it's just like interesting because I don't think either one is going to be an above average 2C, especially at that value. I think that you should have just held on to 22 and 31 and took as many shots as you can because it's a dartboard out there. But they got their guy. I think the only thing that saves this pick from it being like a D instead of a C plus is because of what they did in the back in the second round, where you got Carter Amico, who could have been in the first round, Jack Murtagh, who could have been in the top 30, Shane Van Sage, who we saw could have been in the first round, and then Matthew Guard, who's 6'5" center. So they did incredible. And then they also traded a second round pick for Trevor Zegras. So they are just building their team, and I totally respect what they're doing. I feel like they left, like, if you get Eklund and Martone, I would so much rather have that. So it was really interesting to see that.
Yeah, and so this next pick, Red Wings, they step up to bat. Bases are loaded. A lot of players, a lot of movement. What are the Red Wings going to do? And I think they hit this one out the park with Carter Bear. I'm going to give it a B plus, A minus, probably an A minus. I've been huge on Carter Bear. I know he had the injury. Pretty sure it was an Achilles injury. But this guy can play. He can sell out buildings when he is good. And for Stevie Y, it's getting pretty weird in Detroit. They're becoming a very mediocre team. They've been just outside the playoffs for 2 straight years now. I've heard rumors about Larkin. I've heard rumors about these guys on their team that they could be gone. But Carter Bear, he's a project pick. But if he pans out, that is a huge, huge, huge win for Detroit in the front office. So I'm gonna give it an A minus.
Yeah, I agree with you. A minus here. Carter Bear lacerated his Achilles, or he might have been top eight, top nine, maybe in the top 10, but I think that he could have got a lot higher. I think that this guy is just all hard skill playoff player. Brandon Hagel was his player comp. I just really like that. I feel like Red Wings got a steal here. This is a very Stevie Y pick. I feel like this was always going to be what happened. It's just surprising that Victor Eklund was still available and no one took him, or same with like Lyndon Lakovic, who fell to 27. But because those guys fell anyway, I think Carter Bear was probably next up. So I really like this pick.
Up next was Jackson Smith. Went ahead. I personally think that I give it a B plus because Jackson Smith as a prospect is very similar to Kevin Korchinski's draft year, where his ceiling is through the roof, but his floor is like basement levels, and he's going to be a project pick for a while. But if he can pan out, that is a huge, huge, huge win at number 14, in my opinion. So I went ahead. I gave him a B plus.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think on this one, I would say A because the only reason is a lot of places had this guy top six. He was fourth on their board. 6'3", I think he's going to be what people thought Kevin Korchinski was going to be, except better defensively. Maybe not as skilled offensively, but I think he has that. Going to Penn State with Gavin McKenna now, I feel like it's just huge. I feel like this is one of the best picks that you could make. So A, just because of value. It got really good value here. Yeah.
Yep. And so up next was Brandon Coots. I went ahead and I gave this like a B minus because I wasn't as high on Coots as some people. I really think that, in my opinion, I had him mocked around the 22 area. Canucks went and took him 15, and in this draft, there was a lot of that. Well, it's a weaker draft class. Let's just go get our guy and go, right? Saw it earlier with Nesbitt. We saw it with Kindle. Now we see it with Coots here, number 15. I know some other people were really high on him. Personally, I wasn't, so for that reason, I'm giving him like a B minus.
I'm going to say A minus here. I actually called this pick, and Coots' family came up to me at my hotel and was like, "Hey, you called it, Anthony." And I met his whole family, and I was like, "Wow, this is kind of cool," because I didn't even remember I called it. So they reminded me. He is great family over there. I think that this was a great fit for the Canucks. I think he's going to be a really good two-way player. So yeah, this was perfect.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't like with this pick. I can understand people ranking it higher. Personally, like I had him lower, but up next, I think this warrants an A plus. Not just because Eklund is really really good, but the fact that New York was able to get him at 16. Victor Eklund at 16 is probably the biggest steal of the draft. I had him at number 7 personally. I did not expect him to fall as far. You know, would have loved Chicago to trade up and get him. Didn't happen. But this guy can play. He was Frondel's right hand man with Jurgarden and Hockey Olvesen. Definitely butchered that. But he's a guy that this is a top 6, top 7 talent, at least top 10 that you got at 16. You walk out the draft with Schaefer and now Eklund at this point. I mean, the new front office for New York is just hitting every pick out the park, in my opinion.
Yeah, this was a fantastic pick. I think this was probably the second steal of the draft. There's one player after him that I think was the steal of the draft, but this is an A. To give Victor Eklund at 16, as well as Matthew Schaefer, and then 17, we could obviously parlay this one because it was the same team. You get Keishon Aitchison there too. I think it was best player available on each of these picks. You obviously trade these guys for Dobson because I think that was honestly the best thing you could do. Just take best player available every time. I don't know how Victor Eklund fell this far. I was really hoping the Blackhawks were going to trade up, but to get him and Anton, because the thing about Victor Eklund is he was driving play the entire time for Hockey Allsvechkin with Frondel, so I feel like this was a top 6 player in the future.
Yeah. And like you said, we can just go ahead and segue right into Keishon Aitchison, again, going to New York. And when I see this New York Islanders team, I get a lot of flashbacks to what the Hawks were able to do back in 2022 with getting Korchinski, Nazer, and Renzel. And Aitchison, he's a bully. I know he was dealing with an injury, but this guy before his injury was getting projected top 12 area, and I mean he just hits. He's a freight train out there. He's 6'1", 200. I mean this guy is built. He's a bully. Like he's the one player that no one likes playing against. He's that guy that he'll go out his way to finish a hit, even if it compromises him, which he's going to work on. But with Barry, I mean, this guy was just knocking people out left and right.
Yeah, 26 goals in the O this year. Just dominant. I feel like a lot of that won't transition, but it doesn't really need to. This guy needs to work on his skating a little bit, but falling to 17 is just malpractice. Again, I'm very surprised he fell that far. So, yeah, a very good pick.
Yep.
I'm going to say B plus, A minus.
Yeah. Up next is another A, because Cole Reshny to the Flames. Don't know again how this was able to happen. Reshny was a guy that I had at the yeah, I went ahead, I gave it an A minus. I really, like I said, I really like Gold Reshny. Before you jumped in, I was 13, 14. I was mocking him. They got him at 18. But I really think that he can turn into a really, really, really good top 6 guy for the Flames. And I really like what that new front office is doing over there in Calgary.
Yeah. Let me look what I gave him. Hold on. I gave it a B. It's solid.
Yeah, I think it's also like a B plus. Just because I think you left some value on the board, just because there was a couple players that I would probably pick above him. But when the Flames get him and Colin Potter, I feel like you can't go wrong there. It's just two players that they could add best player available. Very skilled guys, so I really like the pick.
All right, so up next, St. Louis is on the board. And St. Louis, they needed that bigger guy. I had him mocked to Lakovic personally,
Mm-hmm.
and they went and they took Carbonell, which again, I give it a solid B because that's a pick that, that fills their needs. That's a guy that they need, a Justin Carbonell type. Sorry, that can play both ways. He's not going to be a crazy high offensive minded forward, but he's going to get you 15 goals a year, 30 assists, like half a point per game, but he's going to be a shutdown 3C, probably at minimum if he pans out.
Yeah, I did honestly like this pick. Just like, again, I thought they were going to go Lyndon Lakovic here, which he obviously fell. Lyndon, when we get to 27, I'm going to just say basically a spoiler that I think he was the steal of the draft. But you can't go wrong. Like, Carbonell has probably the best shot in the entire draft. He's probably going to continue to play in the queue, but if he doesn't, he's going to play at Boston College and be James Hagen's Ryan Leonard this year. I just really like that pick. He could have went in the range of like 14 to 17, 18. He ended up going 19. So I think there's some value there. I'm going to say B+.
B+, yeah. So up next was another head scratcher, but not because this player isn't talented. Columbus at 20 took Pyotr Andreanov. And the reason why this was a head scratcher, he was mocked. Some mocks had him above Ravensburgen. Some had him below, up until the fact that we found out he renewed his deal in the KHL with a 5-year extension. And he still went to Columbus at 20 over Ravensburgen. It's going to be tough skill-wise. I think he is better, but I don't think that not being able to even call up or have like any North American hockey with your goaltender is the smartest plan for the next 5 years with Columbus, because they're a team that, they were a bubble team this year and they were just missing goaltender, and getting a guy who's not going to be on your team for, let's say he doesn't play out the full 5 years, but probably 3 years, 4 years without being in North America, it was a little bit head scratching, so I went ahead and gave it like a C.
Yeah, for me, this is a flat out like C-, D+. With the players on the board, it just didn't make any sense. The guy is there till 2030 now. Maybe you could buy him out, but he just signed there. Like, why would he want to leave? So it didn't even make sense then. I think there was other goalies that were better than him on the board. I would have rather taken a shot in the second round, maybe get Jack Ivikovic or even Frolov. You trade down if this is the guy you want. Even Ravensburgen was the clear number one, and Ivikovic a clear number two. He had a really good camp at the Gold Star, but it didn't really make sense why this guy went that high.
Yeah, I agree. But up next, Nashville again had another first-round pick. They went ahead. They went with a forward. With their first pick, they went defense here, and they picked up Cameron Reed from Kitchener. I went ahead. I gave this one a B-. I really like Reed as a player. He's a good two-way guy. Solid. I'm just not sure where his ceiling and where his floor are. Be honest, didn't watch a whole lot of film on him, but it looks like a good pick. I don't know how to feel about this with, like we said earlier, value being left on the board big time, especially at pick 23 with defense.
Well, like Cam Reed is a very good player. Smaller, I think he might have been one of the smallest defenders taken in this entire class. There was 0 under 6 feet. So if he was under 6 feet, he would have fallen the rock because none of them got drafted this year. But, it could have been their best player available, so I can't hate it. I'm going to say it's just an average B. Nashville had a weird draft in the first round. Brady Martin, Reed, Riker Lee. So they took an upside play with Riker Lee. They took safer plays with Brady Martin and a Cameron Reed, so yeah, B.
Yeah. This next pick wasn't the weirdest pick, but I personally think like a little bit of a reach. It was Bill Zonin again to Pittsburgh. I gave it a B because Zonin is really, really, really skilled. I mean, that guy, he's a great player to watch, fun player to watch for in the queue. But at 22, don't know. I don't know how others in the league were feeling. This is the area where like these second rounder guys are starting to bleed into the first round because now you're, you know, like we said earlier, weak draft. You're trying to get the guy that you really like personally for your team. So I can't really hate on the pick. That's why I went ahead and gave it on a B.
Yeah, I feel like this is a B pick. Like Bill Zonin's a good player. 22 is kind of the range, so obviously I would have taken Lakovic, but he fell for a reason for some reason. But yeah,
Yeah. Up next, another not the biggest steal like we both agreed on, but a great steal for Ottawa with Logan Hensler. Wow, falling that far. I had him ranked higher than Cam Reed. I had him just underneath Aitchison, right? But he could
Mhm.
easily surpass any of those guys with the ceiling he has. He is an amazing, amazing defenseman. He's super fun to watch, and I really think Ottawa got a huge piece to add to their blue line over these next few years as they're contending.
you know, this is a player that I really liked. I think that his NCAA stats don't show the full picture. He was the second youngest and most productive U19 defenseman in the NCAA this year, youngest player on his team, showed more offensive skill set, right-handed defenseman. You know, this is exactly the right range. He could have gone a lot higher if he would have went to the USHL or went to juniors in Canada or something else. But NCAA was a big risk. I think he's going to have a huge bounce back season, and this is a good one.
Yeah. So at 24, up next, it was Bill Horkoff. Oh, Will Horkoff, sorry. But with Horkoff, I went ahead. I gave this like a B minus. Horkoff,
Yeah,
he's at he's a another one of those like defensive forwards. He's got a good offensive upside, but he's definitely more of a project pick than a lot of these guys. He's gonna need some developing to get all the kinks out, but once that happens, he's gonna be a solid NHLer at the very least. Definitely a top three lines kind of guy, and you can move him around the lineup a lot if he can pan out. So I can't be upset with the pick.
yeah. I'm going to say B plus for William Horkoff. He's obviously got the pedigree. His dad, Sean, played a long time. 6'4", really good size. I think this was good for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Up next, A. If you know me, you know how much I love Vaclav Nistresel at 25. Shout out Vaclav Nistresel Senior. You're an amazing man. I love talking to you. This guy Nistresel, he's the reason why we're not talking about Rybikin in this video. He outperforms him heavily with Muskegon. He's that guy. He's 6'4", 185. Still has plenty of room to fill out his frame. He plays angry. He plays upset. He plays with a passion that you can't teach. And I went ahead. I gave this an A minus because this is a guy I wanted since around like April. I wanted this guy since April, and I'm glad he fell all the way down to 25.
Yeah, I really wanted this guy. When we got Vaclav, I screamed with Ezra, even though we were in the media section, and I didn't really scream. Ezra screamed. I'm just going to say that, but he's the broadcaster of the Lumberjacks. He should have. Very good pick. He's 6'6" now, which is kind of crazy.
Whoa.
So, this guy had four brothers. One of them played in the NHL for a little while. Cup of coffee there. Third round. I just really like this guy. I've been on this guy's train for a very long time just because of when I saw him play, I couldn't stop watching. I got to interview him way back when and didn't even think, he was going to be a Blackhawk. but I was just like calling it, manifesting it, and it happened, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, and one last thing, because I'm crazy in love with this pick. This guy, he shows up in the pressure situations. He was point per game almost in the playoffs for Muskegon. And it's such a great pick with the
Yeah,
situation we're in, needing size, needing guys that can play physical. It filled every single need with this pick. If he pans out, this is easily a top 6 guy, without a doubt.
completely agree.
And then up next, Chicagoland kid going to a hated rival, Riker Lee. Little bit of a reach. Didn't have him mocked in the first round, I'm going to be honest. He definitely shot up some boards the week of the combine, the week of the draft. I went ahead and I gave this like a B minus because a little bit of unpredictability. I'm pretty sure he's one of the smaller guys taken up here. I could be wrong. Let me see. Yeah, no, he's not. But with this pick, I don't know. I don't really see first round with Riker Lee, but it's definitely still a good pick. He's going to Michigan State, which will be huge for his potential. But we'll see. We'll see where the pick goes. Don't hate the pick. Gave it a B minus.
I like Riker Lee. Came up back in my neck of the woods in North Shore, Illinois. Riker Lee 6'1". He was 5'7". Then he had a huge growth spurt. Still hasn't really learned how to play with that size, but he's going to learn quickly. I feel like this is just a really good upside play. But with Lyndon Lakovich at 27, who is the steal of the class, who we're going to talk about next, I just don't know how you do that.
And again, Washington, I don't know how they do it. They do this every single time. They did this year with getting Dylan Strome and somehow being one of the best teams in the NHL when everyone wrote them off. Lyndon Lakovic, 27 overall, A+, without a doubt, A++,
Yeah,
steal of the draft. This
yeah,
guy,
A plus plus.
if it wasn't
Yeah,
for character issues, this guy is an easy top 6 pick, without a doubt. He was top 6, mocked all the way through. Character issues, we don't even know much about them. They could just be overblown. Like, I'm not going to say anything, but that's the reason why he fell, and that's the reason why Washington easily picked him up, and probably one of the more NHL ready guys. Probably not playing the NHL this year, but next year or the year after, probably for sure within the next 2 years getting NHL games. I, I don't know how Washington keeps doing it. A++ for me.
yeah. I have no idea how he fell this far. He shouldn't have. Lyndon Lakovich is awesome. I feel like he's one of the top players in this entire class, and he fell this far. So I was very surprised. No way he should have done that.
Yeah, it's still mind boggles me that a lot of teams pass on him. I would have wanted Chicago taking him if Nestersoul wasn't on the board, but it's still insane. But up next, um, Sasha. Can you pronounce his last name for me? Because I keep
Oh,
butchering it.
Midian.
Yeah, Boumediene. I went ahead and I gave that a B plus. You know, he's a guy where he's a really good defenseman, and the Jets. We were talking about it in our mock draft. They were getting kind of tossed around on the boards a little bit, especially against Dallas. Their defense was kind of faltering. They were being very susceptible to counters, very susceptible to knocking the puck out the zone. But Sasha, he brings a calming presence to that blue line. He's currently 6'2", 183, a bigger defenseman, of course, and he can go in and he can be a guy in the next couple of years for a very good Winnipeg team and really help them out on that blue line, which is something like we all know they needed.
Yeah, Victor Klingsell told the media at the combine that this was the player that he hated playing against the most. He was a mosquito. He hated playing against him, and he just wanted the game to be over because he was over there. So I thought this was really interesting pick, but I thought it was a good pick. When you're at that range, I feel like Boumediene was going to be a Blackhawk, so I was pleasantly surprised that it was Vaslov, but I'm happy for Boumediene here.
Yeah, 100%. And so up next, Chicago, with the trade up, they go out and they get a football player. They get AJ Spelcy, his quarterback. They go get Mason West out of Adena High School. I went ahead and I gave this a B minus only for the fact that this is the biggest boomer bust pick of this first round. B minus B, whatever you want to say. The trade up at the time didn't make sense until you look back and realize he wasn't making it to the Hawks at 34. Carolina, they're a team that they don't need to pick high. They like their team where it is. With their young core coming up, with guys like Logan Stankoven, with guys like Svechnikov, he's still pretty young. They liked where they were, and so they went ahead. They made the trade with the Blackhawks. Blackhawks can't hate KD for this pick because he went out, he took a risk, he took his guy. And Wes, he's got one more year at Fargo, and then he's going to Michigan State. He could be like the seal of the draft in 5 years when we're talking about this. He's only 17, and he's just. I gave it a B, but that could go down to like a C minus or can go up to an A.
Yeah, the NHL lists him at 6'7", but he's 6'2", 6'6" and a quarter. So that's interesting. But this guy at Fargo had really good playmaking ability. He said his best strength was his hockey IQ. I really just love this kid. I think that this could be a steal of the class, but the thing is, we traded 3 picks for him, 2 second rounders and 1 5th. So I feel like you got to take it with a grain of salt with the steal label, because like he could still play football, but he said that he's definitely playing hockey. I just really like Mason West. I feel like this is a good pick.
Yeah, 100%. And that segues into one. I'm just gonna say the worst pick of the first round. San Jose taking Ravensburgen. You trade for Askarov, and you have Askarov. He's like 22. He's a highly touted. Everyone wanted him. Everyone was putting in bids for him. You get him. You win the sweepstakes. He struggles a little bit, but then you turn around and with your other first round pick, you don't go with a D. You don't go with another forward. You go with Joshua Ravensburgen. I went ahead and gave this a D plus because it's just something that with a first round pick, San Jose didn't need. Did not need Joshua Ravensburgen here, right? He probably could have fallen to day 2, and if he didn't, Jack Ivankovich was there, and can't remember his name, but there was another like second rounder goalie that they could have gotten, and
Pro love.
yeah, but first round pick Ravensburgen, you already have Askarov, right player, wrong team, so D plus.
I agree with you. Right player, wrong team. I still think it's a B, just because like Ravensburgen fell, and they obviously snagged him. I don't know if they even thought he was going to be here, but again, like they have Harabel too, who they took, who's also a huge goalie, and then Ravensburgen 6'6", played well in the WHL. I feel like he's a good player and should have been taken at this point, but it's surprising it was San Jose. They had a lot of picks though, so the 1A 1B thing, maybe they're thinking like we needed a Ravensburgen in our prospect pool, so it is interesting.
Yeah, and so up next,
Yeah.
oh yeah, sorry, but up next with the next pick, it was LA, and they went ahead and they took Henry. Oh boy, Bruce. Can you help me out here, Don?
Bruce Devich.
There
Bruce
you go, Bruce
Devich.
Devich. All right, so interesting story with the 31st overall pick. My guy, Marcus DeLong, Max, he got me some insider info. I went ahead and put in my article too. At this pick, Los Angeles was going to go with the sexy pick in Mason West, which is why Chicago had to trade up. But what they settled for is easily a B plus, A minus player with HB. We'll just call him HB for now. London Knights, 31st overall. He's 6'2", 203. And he was like an anchor for that London Knights team that went on to win the Mem Cup. 10 goals, 32 assists, 67 games played. You can't really go wrong with a pick like this. I mean, if you're LA, you're doing everything you can to stop McDavid and Draisaitl, right? Rushnevich, he helps you out with that, and can't complain about the pick. I think it's really good, and I think LA got good value here at 31.
I'm gonna say this is like a B minus. I like it's an pick. I think there's some value in the second round that was a lot better than this, but LA got their guy. Vucevic is a definitely interesting pick, but this was the range he was going to go in. Like I like Colin Potter at 32 more than Henry Vucevic at 31, but I think that the Kings could have. There was a lot of defensemen that went off the board really, really quick, so you can't fault them for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was my rationale. Like initially, I was like, "Whoa," but then I look at like, they went and they had to get their defenseman because everyone knows they needed it, and a lot of guys flew off, like you said, really quickly.
Yeah.
But the final pick to round out the video, probably one of the better picks of the draft. Was really hoping that the Hawks would be able to get him at 29 when they took West. It was Potter. Colin Potter fell to 32. I mean, that's a slam dunk and a half, in my opinion. He's such a good two-way forward with insanely high upside that if you're a team, like, you can't let him get out the first round. And Calgary, they saw that and they went ahead and they took him. And that's one of the better picks. He's a little bit smaller, but he doesn't play like it at all. He's such a good two-way player, and he finds open space to the point where he doesn't have to use his body, but if he needs to, he does. And yeah, it's just a good pick.
Yeah, best skater in the entire class. I feel like played really well in the NCAA this year. When you kind of saw a lot of the players that were taken in the first round not play as well in NCAA. So I feel like this was a really good pick. Could be a steal of the class. You can't really fault the Flames for doing what they did, but they took Rezhny and Potter, which were both under 6 feet. Kind of did a Blackhawks type of draft, but a really good skater here. So they play a lot differently.
Yeah, and Potter at 32, I can't blame him, even though they got two smaller guys, like you said. That's definitely BPA, best player available, without a doubt. All right, so Don, you got anything you want to shout out before we go?
On my YouTube, I got a lot of videos coming out. I appreciate the Cowboy for having me on. We got to do this again. So, check me out on there and X.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine, Don. Thank you again for having me out.
Of course.
Make sure, of course, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts on our grades. I know both of us, we had pretty similar, but there were some of them where, we varied. And let's see what you guys have to think. Go ahead and follow me on X at BHawkCowboy. And thank you all for watching.